and also the advisor is also an entity, so that means it takes plural verb. But and also I want to give you another example. When you are talking about meal, when you want to eat butter, let me say bread and butter is my break for my I took bread and butter for my breakfast, so that means bread and butter is a whole meal. You can't say bread and butter are, because you are talking about the whole meal. That is what you are eating at the same time. Is just one meal. So these are exceptions in concord that you have to put into consideration. Don't forget I said that when you are talking about using hand, you have to use a plural verb, in exception that if that the two subjects is talking about one person, an idea, or when you are talking about breakfast or meal, you use is. Thank you. Yes, the third rule is called an indefinite pronoun. We have indefinite pronoun. Indefinite pronouns such as the words such as everybody, anyone, each, no one, they take singular verb. Everybody, anyone, each, no one takes a singular verb. For example, everybody wants to succeed. Everybody wants to succeed. Everybody wants to succeed. And also, no one, another example says, no one was present. No one was present. Was is a singular verb that goes with no one. And also, sometimes when you want to use everybody, there are sometimes that you have to use is or are, depending on the context, depending on the context of the question given to you. Everybody wants to succeed, so that is a singular a verb goes with indefinite pronoun. Everybody, anyone, each, no one, etc. Now for the fourth rule, says pronoun after every or each. Pronoun after every or each. After everybody, anyone, singular subject takes a singular verb. Also plural subject takes a plural verb. Then any subject that is being joined by and takes a plural verb, in exceptions if it is the same idea, the same person, or when you are talking about meal, when you are talking about your breakfast or your lunch, you use is. Now we also talk about that you use is or her. Is or her. Each girl was present. Each girl wore their uniform. Now we also talk about indefinite pronoun, which is what, like everybody, anyone, each, no one, takes a singular verb. That is what we have already talked about. If you are just joining, you have not, you are welcome, and we still have a lot to do together. Now the next rule, verb. However, when you are talking about, when you don't use a pair of, you can use plural verb, but when you say a pair of, you have to make sure you use a singular verb, which, for example, a pair of trousers is on the chair. A pair of trousers is on the chair. Another example, a pair of shoes cost 15,000 naira. A pair of shoes cost 15,000 naira. A pair of shoes cost 15,000 naira. But whenever you want to use, maybe you want to talk about pairs, but you are not using pairs like glasses, like trousers, you can use plural, because that may be more than one. But whenever you use a pair, it takes singular verb. Now moving on to the next rule that says collective noun. When you are talking about collective nouns are groups of words: government, committee, choir, and the likes. These are collective noun. When you use them, it takes a singular verb. When you talk about collective noun, such words like government, um, committee, choir, etc. takes a singular verb. For example, the government has spoken. The government has spoken. The government has spoken. Another example, the committee. When you are talking about the committee, when you are using a committee, when you are talking about a collective noun, this is also an exception. You have to be very careful when they are in alignment doing the same, or when they are doing separate things. Maybe they are arguing, you use plural verb. For example, the committee are arguing. That means they are not in a line. They are not in a line. So that is why you have to be very careful looking at the context of the question. I said collective noun. When we are talking about collective noun, those words such as government, choir, we are talking about committee. These words you denotes a singular. It's being singularized, so it takes a singular verb. However, when the collective noun are not in alignment, maybe they are arguing, or the same individual, they are doing accompaniment. Accompaniment in concord, words like with, as well as, together with. When you are talking about along with, you use singular verb. Why? When an example, when when a sentence is given to you, and it is being, you don't take you don't focus on anything that comes after those accompaniment words. Those are accompanying words. You don't take notes of them. With all the teachers is coming, not you put more attention on that. With, you have to use singular verb. Now, if the subject, the first subject, is a plural subject, if it is a plural subject, maybe the teachers as well as the students, you use are. Why? Because the teachers is in plural form, so that means your verb must also be in plural, so you have to take note of that. Now we have countable and uncountable. When you talk about countable and uncountable in concord, countable nouns can be counted. That means you can count them one after the other. Uncountable nouns cannot be counted. When you talk about water, you talk about sand, you talk about hair. It's not something that you can pick one after the other to. And when you're talking about countable nouns depends on if it is singular. It can be singular and it can also be plural. Do you understand? Apples are sweet. When you say apples are sweet, you are saying is more than one apple. Do you understand? Then you say water is important, not water are important. However, there is still an exception to that. When you are talking about sources of water, like rainwater, well water, stream water, categorizing is in category. So you are categorizing waters, you can use are. But when you are talking about water that we drink, you use singular verb. This countable and uncountable concord. As I've said, countable nouns are nouns that you can count, that you can pick one after the other. That you can pick one after the other. And not be counted, that you cannot hold. So you use singular verb for uncountable nouns, and then you use singular or plural verb depending on the subject for countable nouns. However, whenever you are categorizing this uncountable noun, sometimes you can use plural verbs also. Now we have special singular noun ending with s. You have to be very careful. There are special nouns ending with s, such word like mathematics, news, measles, physics end in s. It takes singular verb. For example, mathematics is my best subject. Mathematics is my best subject. Mathematics is my best subject. You can't say mathematics are because of the s. There are special nouns that ends in s. Then another example, the news was exciting. The news was exciting, not the news her. The news was exciting. Now we have amount concord. Amount concord. That when you're talking about money, when you're talking about your time, distance, they are called amount concord.